It is episode 423 of This Is Whole Life. You know us as the trio. Well, no, wait a minute. I just looked to my right. Melanie, what did I see?
There's a guy in a green shirt over there.
I believe, sir, would you like special? We have a special guest this week, and I was just thinking that maybe you should introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Ken Wetmore, and the more I think about it, the more if you're going to make me a special guest, I can work on that.
You can work on that. Well, if you caught the message this week, you know that Ken introduced himself because, it's been a little while since you've heard him.
5 weeks, I think.
Since you've heard him here or there. Anywhere.
Right. Anywhere. Well, thank you, Dr. Seuss.
I was trying to, it didn't come to me until I got to the last one, and then I didn't have an escape route, so it was kind of fell flat. Sorry, guys.
There you go.
Well, anyway, we have an email this week. It starts out, "Hey, Randy," and then it goes straight into instructions. So here we go. Special guest. Please tell Ken to stop taking attendance at whole life events. It brings back traumatic memories of mandatory Vespers attendance from my college years. Ken should know better. Laugh out loud. On a more serious note, I found Ken's message intriguing because as a kid, I don't think I ever got the concept of playing. I would try to play, and I remember being told that as Christians, we don't do that type of activity, especially if it was on the Sabbath. I ended up being more into reading and always being cautious of participating in actual play activities. Interesting. While I always knew that God had my back even as a kid, that seemed more of a way to survive, to know that things would be okay one day eventually. And I treasure that experience because it kept me mostly focused on God. But to become like a little child to get into heaven, especially trying to understand the basic function of play, that concept is escaping me at the moment. I guess my question is this. If I was unable to grasp the concept of play as a kid, how do I know spiritually that I am like a little child and can enter heaven? I know that is somewhat of a simplistic question, and the answer was probably in Ken's message multiple times. But apparently it got past me because it has been weighing heavily on my mind. As always, I'm keeping the whole life family in my prayers. Carolina Dave.
Oh, thanks, Carolina Dave. Yeah, most people don't realize this, but there is a, rocks, paper, scissors play test before you get to walk through the Golden Gate. So, Dave,
you and St. Peter,
be practicing, buddy. So,
rock, paper, scissors. I suck at that game. I'm in trouble.
Well, not everybody. That's why I said practice. So
practice now. Okay. Well,
no,
I'm gonna get started.
I think firstly, Dave, don't despair if you're not naturally playful. I don't know that that's on the final exam. And when it truly comes down to it, what's a child? They're infinitely trusting. I mean, that's it. And I wanted to use the child in the play in the sermon to make the point that I don't for a second, I don't really believe that Jesus' main point was be playful when he was saying, unless you become like a child. I do think, though, that it's something that was fun to think that is an aspect of children that perhaps Jesus thought was a secondary or, another aspect of children that might be worthwhile for us to think about being like.
Don't overlook it.
Don't overlook it.
I was reading something this week about the eye of the needle.
Yeah.
Where it was something with the gates of the city. It was, I don't remember if this was when I was reading, if it was in Jerusalem, and that basically the camel, it wasn't that the camel couldn't go through, but it was that you had to be stripped of everything that it had on it.
Now you're going into perilous theological waters.
Is this kind of the same thing that we think we know because it was always just, as a kid, you're thinking, well, how is a camel going to get inside the eye of a needle? That's impossible. And here, kind of like what he's saying, like, well, how do I know if I'm feeling like a playful as a kid, or is this just trying too hard?
See, this is funny because it's the difference between setting up a standard of you must play versus receiving permission to play. So maybe it's a little paradigm shift where maybe this is just permission to play, not like a standard you have to attain.
I like that. Well said, Melanie. That was what I was looking for.
Okay, so receiving permission to play.
Right.
Versus, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Then a standard, like you have to play.
Okay.
Exactly.
Permission versus you have to.
Oh. Yeah, I like that better. I mean, that makes it feel like it's not
people. And what did we say one of the attributes of play was? It has to be voluntary. Mm-hmm. And so if you must play,
I don't want
then
to play.
Are you really playing? Because you must.
But if I must, do I want to?
You might not.
I might not.
Wow, actually, now I have to rethink whether or not I actually played as a kid because the voluntary part. I'm going to tell on my parents. When I was a kid, we played so hard that it was work. Dad, I'm telling on you right now because I know you're listening.
Tell us more.
We used to go water skiing, but we didn't just water ski.
No.
We woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning before any other boats were on the lake, and we did the slalom course about 150 times. When we went snow skiing, we had our lesson in the morning, and then we practiced the techniques in the afternoon. I mean, it turned out that I can water ski and snow ski well.
And you're pretty proficient
But
at
I'm
it.
not sure if that actually counted as playing then.
If the expectation is perfection, as it was for me, then I feel like sometimes play was like, look, I think I'm done playing. Could we
The expectation is always perfection.
can we do something else for a while that doesn't require that? I don't know. I'm rapidly trying to think in my head, what was it when we were kids that didn't require perfection? So I'm like, what activity would I rather trade this out for that didn't have the weighty expectations?
Or productivity, because I remember my grandmother, that the saying that probably everybody's heard, idle hands are the devil's playground.
Yeah.
Now, see, I guess the devil can play. but yeah,
Who gave him permission?
Yeah, I don't know.
See, I think if we could answer that, maybe we would have the remainder.
Well, and why does the devil get a playground?
I don't know. What did he do to deserve it?
I don't know.
Because he's beautiful? Maybe not so much anymore. Did he get to keep the beauty? That's the question. Or is he still the horned-tailed person?
This is definitely going in a different direction than I was.
Yeah, that totally went a long way around. Well, let's get back on track then, shall we? Dictionary definition of play. This one surprised me. Surprised me a little bit more because I'm like, okay, if you would have asked me, Randy, what's the definition of fun? And I think I would have given you attributes of the child like you asked for, because that kind of seems like fun, right? We kind of associate kids with fun. So I think that's what I would have answered. But I'm wondering if we overcomplicated fun, and obviously the tangent.
I don't
we just
remember
went
coming
on.
up with a definition of fun.
Well, you had the dictionary definition of play, not
Play.
fun. So look at that. Look at
Not the same
Slightly
thing.
different things.
not the same thing. Well,
No wonder you were surprised by the
I
definition.
know, right? I was like, wow, this doesn't sound like that at all. Wow. And Ken even had lunch today. So I'm just like, he's maybe that's what it is. He's on fire today.
That's it.
I
Had something spicy.
There you go. Definition of play: activity engaged in for enjoyment and recreation, especially by children. And then engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than a serious or practical purpose. So it's not as frivolous as I would have thought.
Okay.
The actual definition. Like play just seems like, play, you do that after you've done your chores. You do that after you've done your homework and everything else in the world is done. And then it's time for play. That's kind of what it felt like to me growing up. Mm-hmm. And so that almost seems like, well, do you deserve fun? And
play is dessert, so it's not like a part of the main course. It ends up being dessert because it happens after everything else.
So, play is like chocolate cake, not like, vegetables.
Yeah, but you're supposed to eat your cake first in case you have a heart attack before you finish the rest of your food and you don't get your cake.
Yeah, and we always look down on people who eat their dessert first,
We
right?
do.
In the same way we look down on people who play a lot.
Everyone in the chat, it was kind of crazy. And exactly what you said, like someone in second service said, when did we become boring people? Like everyone was resonating with, this is like play is a kid's thing, because there were just a ton of people who were commenting about all the fun they used to have, but none of it was now. Like it went from childhood, as kids, childhood, youth, teenage years, even college years. So we had games like Capture the Flag, Manhunt, Kick the Can, opening fire hydrants in New York City. Here's looking at you, Tito. Ding Dong Ditch, hiding in a gorilla suit to scare his sister's dog, and hiding under dad's suit on the bed to scare mom. So like all the things, like it took imagination, it took friends, it took more than one person getting together and having fun. But not one person, and I mean, there was a list, a long list, but not one of those people were like, hey, last week, I skipped work and played hooky and we went to the theme park for the day. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but definitely not in the same way that we're looking at it as kids. And then it seems like if we're thinking about playing now, it's like you're getting away with something. If I have to take off time from something important to do play, where does God play? Like you said, he didn't rest. Was that play? Or was all creation play? I just thought that was really interesting. Like, if we enjoy our work, can that be a version of play?
Well, now we're anthropomorphizing God. So, in other words, ascribing human characteristics to God. How would God play?
I mean, I don't know.
Just seeing Randy looked at Melanie like, dude, you're the one with the PhD. Why are you asking me that question?
No, I was trying to read. I was going to see if I could repronounce that word you said.
I couldn't even pronounce the word I just said.
I was just really concentrating.
I knew I couldn't. I was sitting over here just looking at her.
I was really trying to concentrate, like thermal. What the?
I feared if I looked at you, I wouldn't be looking at Melanie. Wouldn't have to answer the question. So does God play? I think God does play, whether we're giving, the Almighty God, who's certainly high and above anything we can possibly imagine. Whether he plays or not, there's definitely throughout Scripture a very playful element to God. And as we're going to talk about in this coming week when we talk about laughter, there are a lot of very funny passages in the Bible that are intentionally funny. There's a lot of humor in the Bible. There's puns. There's all kinds of little plays on words. And so it seems evident to me, if you look at nature, it seems like you see amusing things that happen in nature. So it does seem to me that we serve a playful God, a God that has a sense of humor, and if we're created in his image, one of the things that seems to go across time and culture is the need to laugh and the need to play. That goes along with the need to cry and the sadness as well. But there's the opposite side of it is the joy and happiness. And so I definitely think that you can go to work and take an honest paycheck and play at work. And I think it's been proved over and over again in organizational leadership studies and things like that, that in workplaces where there is a sense of fun and a sense of play, you get more accomplished, that you have better retention, which works favorably in organizations. You also are more creative and you get better results. Now, you can take it to extreme. You see some of that in, some of the cautionary tales out of some of the startup companies that it's all play, very little work. So there's a balance to everything. So I'm not at all sitting here and saying, employees should be able to play all day long. I think some people actually do play for a living in some cases, but there's a portion of work. I haven't been in any job that didn't require me to do some things that I wasn't really wanting to do, that were less voluntary, and they were more like, well, I'm doing that because I'm getting a paycheck to do it. Working at summer camp, I talked about that in the sermon. People I remember coming back to the conference office in the conference I was at and having people like, well, I hope you enjoyed your 10-week vacation down there at summer camp. And I'm like,
wow.
I hope you,
Have you been to summer camp?
Well, they had, and that's the problem, is that they had been to summer camp, but they'd been on the other side of the wall. They'd been on the play side of the wall where it was all play all the time. And there was a lot of super fun things at camp. I felt like I played a large portion of my time there, but it also was very wearing because you were leading the play in some cases, and that you get tired. It was so funny at the beginning. I was just thinking about my first summer at that camp, and one of the things we did to play it was actually, we did it for the campers, but I felt like it was as much for the staff, is that one of my staff members at the beginning of the summer said, will the camp pay for me to buy a gorilla suit and a banana suit And I was like, okay, tell me more.
Ken,
so
only Ken says, tell me.
I
what?
will
Tell me
consider
more.
this. I'm intrigued.
In my mind, I'm like, what are you kidding? We don't know. And Ken's like, tell me more. I like this. Please.
So we did buy it just to get. And I love this idea. In fact, maybe this should just be for podcast people. And we can buy it here. But what would happen is we'd put somebody in the banana suit, and they would just go wandering into the cafeteria or wandering down at some activity. They just come walking through, talking to kids like nothing. There's no setup to it, nothing. They're just walking around talking to people in this banana suit. And about 5 minutes later or so, the gorilla would sneak in through the side door and just start stalking the banana and trying to sneak up on the banana. And so as the campers caught on to what was going on, they'd start trying to warn the banana that the gorilla was coming. And the last second, the gorilla would spring at the banana would dodge off. And then there was this chase around the cafeteria, and they'd go running off, and the campers would try to block the gorilla from catching the banana, and the bad campers would try to help the gorilla get the banana by tripping them. Anyway, it was
wow.
It was so much fun.
That's
so what do you
awesome.
think? Next week in church, I bring a banana costume. Just have it saunter across the platform.
Well, the topic is laughter, so
Yeah.
I think
I'm pretty sure that there's probably at least one person on staff who'd volunteer to be inside the banana suit. So
I'm guessing.
at least one, I'm guessing. So I noticed that you didn't bring up Job.
So now you're right, I didn't. With that said, I've been getting ready for my laughter sermon this week. Do you know the word laugh and laughter happens in the book? I have to go count it, but I am pretty sure that the word laugh and laughter happens more in the book of Job than any other book of the Bible.
Wait.
I need to go back and look at it to be sure, but it's significant how many times the word laugh and laughter occurs in the book of Job, which is
guy?
yeah.
That makes all the laugh.
Yeah.
I snorted, sorry. Well, because we've been talking a lot about Job, and it seemed like Job had the life, right, before everything bad is taken away. And it seems like that's almost play. So it was like, is that a warning? Like, when everything is too good and we're having family dinners with.
Well, does it seem like God plays a little bit with Job at the end when he's asking him all these, where were you when I did this and where were you when I did that? I mean, I don't get the sense when I read it that God was like stern and angry. It seems to me more playful. So Job, tell me, were you there when I measured out everything? Were you there? And Job is, I wasn't. Come on, man. And
but he also this wasn't a very fun game that you just let
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And again, not suggested God was being playful with Job with everything he went through, but in the answers that he comes back with Job, there is a certain element of playfulness in there that at least comes across to me.
Well, we've just been kind of hanging out like 5 or 6 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks. We kind of got back to Job every week, so I just wanted to kind of continue that on and see how it
put it in there.
and didn't know if that was.
We'll bring it back around next week for the laughter one. Well, I'll do my count and see how many times it appeared. Laugh and laughter appear in Job quite a bit. Some in Psalms, some in Proverbs, a fair amount in Ecclesiastes.
There you go. Amari, I hope you're listening because we're just continuing the Job saga, and I know you'll appreciate that. Well, so. One of the questions we had was from Rod, who said, what are some biblical examples that illustrate the importance of play? So was there, the first thing, and someone in the chat, I was watching them. I was watching Rod type next to me sitting on the front row, but someone immediately answered back David was maybe someone that would, a biblical example of play. And I don't know if that, is that like the exuberance?
He played hide and go seek with Saul for a long time, right? So,
so that is,
high stakes game of
very high stakes.
No, I think that when, I mentioned creation, that I felt like there's some playfulness there.
Yeah.
When we look through nature, we see a lot of playfulness there. Jesus is playful with his disciples in the way that he kind of teases them at times. Just think about John 3. I mean, we often, it's a beautiful passage, John 3:6, for God so loved the world.
Yeah.
But before that, Jesus is very intentionally playing with Nicodemus unless you are born again. I mean, he's intentionally messing with him. And Nicodemus is like, come on. I'm an old guy. How am I going to be born again?
Yeah.
He just tells, I tell you the truth. Unless you figure out how to make that happen, you won't make it into the kingdom of God. There's just a lot of playfulness in who Jesus is throughout the scriptures. You see it there.
So is there a difference between play and playfulness?
No, that was going to be my question, just only because I totally agree. And I think that's why we always say, well, we always feel that softer Jesus than we do the Father who is you see all the other things that, the children of Israel and the wandering for 40 years, all these different things. And we go, oh, God is bad, but Jesus was soft and, whatever. But you mentioned Jesus is coming soon. And so clear your throat, preach it loud, be working towards getting everyone ready for Jesus to come back. But why does that reaction feel like I should be doing something? I should be working.
Well, did you ever sing the hymn when you were a kid? Work for the night is coming.
Yes. Yeah. And it just, and so maybe it's just that we've been kind of programmed that way. But where's the fun part?
I think that
what's the fun part?
I
of that?
think we've been improperly programmed that play distracts from work, that play keeps work from happening,
or play's not effective.
Right? Play is no. I wouldn't say this ineffective. But we've been taught there's work that's productive, that's useful, it accomplishes something. Play, unproductive, doesn't accomplish anything.
Silly time,
not worth it. Get serious, get the work done. There's no time for play. And, the problem with that is that people who don't play can't keep working. There comes a point where there is a breakdown and people cannot keep doing it. And I could point at several Adventist pioneers that went to an early grave because they worked themselves to death. And the question is it better to work a little bit less and live longer? Or is it like so important there's a time and a place where there's just stuff that has to happen. Like you've got to get some stuff done. There's other times where we really, going back to my mentor, Dave Livermore is saying is like, if you have to take time to sharpen your axe. If you really want to get the most accomplished, you got to take time to sharpen your axe. If you just keep chopping wood with the same axe, it gets dull to the point where you're not making any progress and you're actually not getting you're actually less productive than if you would have taken some time just to stop, resharpen, and then get out there. And for me, play is a form of resharpening the axe. It's part of the rest. It's part of, being a productive person means playing. I, never ever apologized. First week of camp, when we had our staff training week, we played a lot of games with our staff to do training. It's one of the things that we do here at Whole Life when we go do retreats with our staff. We'll play games, and it sometimes feels like it's, what is it? But it bonds people. You start understanding why people do the things they do, because when you play with somebody, you go, oh, that's how they do things. Okay. And so I think that play is just such a vital part of life. I think we sometimes try to create work and play over here. And I think that you can play at work and it actually accomplishes things.
Especially if you work in an office with Albert. You can play at work.
Or John Monday. Just saying, there's good times to be had by all. You mentioned Stuart Brown and his properties of play.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I think are worth repeating. Apparently, the fun of the point of play, it has to be apparently purposeless. It's done for its own sake. It's voluntary. There's an inherent attraction to whatever it is that you're doing. You lose track of time. It's you kind of lose track of yourself. You're not so worried and you're so serious about maybe your self-image at the time. Improvisational potential, meaning you can just move from one thing to another, and you can just make it up as you go. and it continues to be desirable. You want to continue to do it. So, and the quote that you gave from him said the ability to play is critical, not only to being happy, but also to sustaining social relationships and being a creative and innovative person. The last two, being a creative and innovative person, sounds like work. But the list before that doesn't really seem like freedom of time. Well, I went to work. I didn't get anything done, but we had fun. So how do we feel good about saying, I would like part of my relationship with Jesus and part of my witness of and spreading the gospel could be fun. Is there a way to make those happen with those in mind?
I think so. And if you look at the list, the properties of fun, really the only two that you could not apply to work are the first two. Voluntary and without a sense of purpose. I mean, I've had jobs that I get paid to do that were not necessarily voluntary, but I lost a sense of time because I was enjoying what I was doing. I was in the zone. I mean, we get here to podcast, and there's times where I'm like, wow, that went really quick. Fast, it went really fast. I was having a good time. It doesn't mean I wasn't working. It just means that we'd figure out how to create a playful sense, or there's a sense of play in it. And so, like I said, I really think that the only thing that distinguishes quote unquote work from play is the voluntary aspect of it and the apparent lack of purpose. And like I said, 95%, I'd say 90% of play does have a purpose that may not be on, you may not see it, but it's there. It's renewing you're allowing your brain to renew itself. It's
even if it's playing a certain game that a certain pastor really loves to play that you don't,
especially if that,
but you love him
because
so much you play anyway.
Exactly, because you that it's training your brain to think critically.
That made me laugh. Everyone that was there. There wasn't many of us from staff. It's summertime, and everyone was seemingly MIA except for a couple. But I did like the chuckle. The collective chuckle was very made my heart laugh a little bit.
It was funny. I got a text message from a friend after the service, and they said, "What is this game?"
They don't know. How can they be a friend of yours and not know what this is?
A newer friend.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll give them a pass.
And I hadn't pulled this one out on them yet. So I said, "What is this game, and when can we schedule time?"
When can we schedule time?
I was like, "Now you're speaking my language."
Not only do I want to know, we got to schedule time.
Yeah.
Be careful what you ask for.
That's it. The thing that I think. What we assume is that the only thing that, really has value to getting things accomplished is just the work. But yet the play, if you list out, and I think this was still from Stuart Brown. These were play boosts our overall well-being. Play helps us cope with stress, boosts our physical health, promotes culture, and creates and deepens relationships.
Yeah, that list was one that I kind of put together as a compilation of a bunch of different resources that I'd read.
But which one of those do you not want?
I'd like them all.
No, I like them all too. And so why doesn't it is it just Western culture that we're so ingrained in that we're like, well, I sure would like to be a little less stressed. I certainly, would like to take anything off that list and maybe just increase it a little bit, but there's work to do. And finding the balance of, or it's a little unsaid. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's unsaid, but it doesn't feel unreal when it's like, well, what'd you do yesterday? Well, I didn't do a darn thing. I just played the whole day. I didn't get anything meaningful accomplished. I took a day to myself. I read. I took a ride on my Harley. Whatever it is. And it's like, oh, you can get a whole weekend. We can get anything done. And there's a connotation, or at least a feeling like, wow, wasted a whole weekend, huh?
Well, I feel like that anyway. Nobody else has to judge me. I feel that way. If I didn't get something done in the weekend, I kind of just feel down. Like, depressed. Like I didn't get anything.
The whole weekend,
done.
I got a little laundry done, or whatever. It just feels like we're not. Like it's just the norm. Like why didn't you do something that was meaningful, or like it was a waste of? I mean, to me, the one I always heard was, well, that's just a waste of time. So,
but I mean,
you don't get that time back.
I think that dividing line between work and play maybe is a little too stark. Maybe that's a little too much of a binary because, I mean, there are things that I do that are work that I love doing. Like demoing my house. I do enjoy that. That's
working
work.
with Randy.
And working with Randy.
Of course.
I mean, that's work, but it's so much fun that it's kind of play.
Yeah.
And I happen to be getting something done too.
Well, I'll use an example. Yesterday, I mowed my lawn. Work, right? Well, I also, while I was doing it, was listening to an audiobook that's one that I've been enjoying. It was a fun for Ken to read book or listen to book. And so what was I doing? Was I working or was I playing? Or had I figured out a way to work and play? And
fellow lawnmower with the earbuds.
Oh, yeah.
Good
Absolutely.
job, Ken. Good job.
No doubt.
I just caught up on I caught up on 3 episodes of my favorite podcast that's back finally while I mowed my grass this week.
Yeah.
Felt good.
And a lot of times if you can pair something that you don't enjoy with something that you do enjoy, you find that the thing that you didn't enjoy is actually doable.
It gets much easier.
And, not to be Mary Poppins, but when you can turn something into a game, suddenly work can become play because you have transformed it into something that feels fun. Rochelle will tell you that it can be very, very effective with students to set up different centers in the classroom that have different activities that they can do and let them pick what they're going to go do. And as they're playing at these centers, they're actually learning things. They've chosen it, and they call it directed play.
Yeah.
But, and I hope I didn't butcher that, Rochelle. But but the thing is, the kids will learn more when they're playing than when they're sitting at a chair filling out a worksheet.
Yeah.
But when they're actually manipulating things, when they're and Rochelle will tell you, it's pretty astounding how kids will figure things out in the process of play. I heard so many times about a student who was having difficulty with a concept, and then we'll call Rochelle over and they go, "Hey, Mrs. Wetmore, look at this, blah blah blah," and all of a sudden they've figured it out in their play.
Yeah.
So, as adults, adding play into work, and that again, it doesn't mean you're not doing things. It just means just because you're doing work doesn't mean that it has to be a drudgery, that you can't have fun, that you can't enjoy yourself, that you can't play.
But can you be serious in play? Like, what about your relationship with Jesus, right? Does it have to be, because we have personal time, we have study, we have prayer. Can prayer be fun? Can prayer be lighthearted? Can study be lighthearted? Or does it have to feel like I really need to concentrate and I need to learn? Or can we learn through play the same way with God that like you're just describing?
Well, I can't speak to anybody else's marriage, but I can speak to mine. And I will say that the best times in my marriage are not the times where I am all serious. And, the good times in my marriage have a lot of laughter, a lot of teasing. Even when we're trying to accomplish things, there's a sense of having a good time and playfulness in that relationship. And so when you start talking about a relationship with God, I just wonder why, if we're created in God's image, and that's not just talking about how we look, it's talking about our brains and the way that we think even. If we're created in God's image, why would we think that a relationship with God would be all seriousness and no enjoyment? Who wants to hang out with somebody they don't enjoy? That you're just serious. I've had a couple of those friendships where there's like nothing, like it's all serious all the time. And honestly, there comes a point in that relationship, you're like, man, I just can't keep doing this. This is a lot.
I think it's the question, age-old question of what's holy. we walk softly. Even the Pathfinders. We walk softly in the sanctuary. We keep us.
It's
things
funny.
like
My
this.
worship today was
No, it was.
my literal worship today is David dancing before the Ark of the Covenant as cymbals are being crashed, and and who gets in trouble in that story? His first wife, Michael, who's it's like, you look like a fool out there. You're making a fool of yourself in front of everybody, and at least the writer of the story seems to say that Michael was in the wrong on that. For David's like, and I'll make a bigger fool of myself if that's what it takes in front of God.
That is one of my favorites, though.
Yeah.
Is David saying that? Like, oh yeah.
I wonder if we subconsciously, there's certain things that we ascribe to ourselves as a result of, quote unquote, the fall. Oh, well, I have a tendency toward selfishness, or I might have a tendency toward anger, or I might have the tendency toward, whatever. And do you think maybe subconsciously we think that tendency toward play falls in a category with some other undesirables?
Maybe.
That was, I think, what you just said so eloquently was kind of what I was feeling or trying to ask is why do those get, or how do those get, this goes in this column, this goes in this column. And that was part of the thing when I just, even from a young kid, I just never felt like going to church, like anyone was ever having fun. And that's what I was completely all about. All I ever wanted to do was play. And my brother was a little bit more serious kind of person, and I was just like always, and he'd be like, leave me alone. I just want to read a book. I'm like, no, let's play with our Hot Wheels. We're not allowed to play with those on Sabbath. Well, too bad. Let's do it anyway. Mom and Dad are sleeping, whatever. And it just always seemed like fun somehow always got put, or play got put in that other, like, well, you can go in the water, but don't get wet.
And don't have a good time.
And don't have a good time. Frisbee, no. And I'm not here to debate what people really hold on to and feel really, in their heart how they need to do certain things. But also, it just seems like that has been like from the beginning. And it's like, well, I can't possibly. I laugh with God and I feel good about it. But then there's a part of me that's like, ooh, maybe I should have been a little more serious. Maybe I should have. Did he like? I don't know, and I feel bad about that because I don't think that's who God is. But yet there's a part of me that just hasn't let go.
Well, listen to the tug of war that exists just in the New Testament. You have Jesus saying, "You must become like little children," and you have Paul saying, "Well, when I got older, I put away childish things." So, like, you got this Paul and Jesus on 2 ends of the spectrum. There.
I wonder who you should go with if you're trying to figure out one. Which is not to say I don't believe Paul is. So let's not be misquoted here. But
I was just going to go with my next question,
it's Ken at wholelife.church.
But why is it that, I think that when we look at those things, again, context matters so much for everything that's being said. What's Jesus' context for what he's saying? What's Paul's context? There is a time to grow up and to be mature about things. And there also is a time to take on the characteristics of a child.
So, really, finally, the thing I really wanted to talk about just briefly was, Ken, like, from the message this week, you mentioned the staff and family little mini vacation and how we, what those things, those team building, getting people together that they get to know each other better, and overall as a church, how do you feel like our work? Not that everyone that comes, not everybody works for the church, but even from when we gather together, is there a cognizant idea, or how do you feel like we are with work and fun or play as an overall church? Like what we do as a quote church family. Do we play enough? Do we not play enough?
I think we're playing a lot this summer.
Well, and then as soon as I wrote the question down, I was like, summer party not included in this conversation because that's kind of a little bit different than normal.
Mm-hmm.
It does pain me at times that people find enjoyment have to go somewhere other than a church function, and that churches don't offer more opportunities for play and fun. I think Whole Life does fine. Do I think we can do more? I think we can. I think that there's a social aspect. I think it's just such a fascinating thing to me that the New Testament church, when it's like in its early infancy, it says they ate together every day. And I think that the important aspect of that is not so much that they were physically partaking of food together, but that it indicates a very social group of people, that liked spending time together, and that weren't exclusive, because it wasn't that they were cloistering off, as they were bringing people in. They were like join, and I think a time and an age where people are very hungry for real human interaction, to find a place where they belong, where they're wanted, and where they can find hope and joy and peace and community. I think that the church would be wise to have its doors open more than once a week.
Well, and the thing that I had this question written down, and I was thinking about it during the message, and then today during staff meeting. I'm not going to mention who said it, but the idea that I was thinking of was, at times in the past, other churches I've been at, it's like, oh, you're going to do a lake day. Like, we're doing a bunch of summer things this year. Oh, you're going to do whatever activity it is, and the church is going to pay for it. Oh, well, we should really debate that, because what would people think about how we're spending God's money, quote unquote, for something that's fun? I mean, is that really important enough for us to spend that much money? And yet today someone was like, wow, what an impact an event like just our ice skating had, right? Like,
I mean, that goes to the point that there are things that we do at Whole Life. The summer, the family vacation we did at the beginning of the summer, that was expensive. That wasn't something that everybody could do here at Whole Life.
Kenya,
the trip to Kenya, and we really debated that, because one of our values is to be inclusive, but we also wanted to try doing a trip like that, because there are people at this church that's something that they'd like to do. They have the means to do, and they'd like to do it with family, with the church family. Yeah. But there are a lot of other things that we want to do, that we want to say, you know what? We don't want money to be the reason you don't show up. And if you've been like me, there have been times in my life, Rochelle and I's life together, where the money to go ice skating was just not going to happen. It was not going to be in the budget. And if the church was doing that, we would love to go. But if we have to pick between that and groceries or, paying rent, because you're going to come up, $20 or $30 short on rent, you're going to do what you have to do. And so there's a lot of things that we try to do that, I think it's a great use of God's money to spend time together and to create relationships. And to the point that you were telling, and we had a staff member who just had some friends that were in a situation where that person invited them to come, and she didn't feel like they would have been able to come any other way if it wasn't free. And it was a really good thing for that family to be able to do. So I've been grateful here. I've been in churches, like you said, Randy, where there was debates over that sort of thing. I'm glad that at least here at Whole Life, I haven't heard any of that debate ever. The thing that I've heard from the board repeatedly is, we take care of our people, and we watch, our church members, our staff members, we really want to go ahead and do the things that will build community, that will build togetherness, and that will. And I think that's one of the reasons why I hear over and over, when people come and visit this church, they feel at home. They feel the sense of belonging, a sense of that. And it's the people that, like, they'll walk right in and immediately they feel it. And I don't think that's just because we do it in a church service. I think it's because we are intentionally, as a staff and as a church, creating an atmosphere where people have a sense of belonging, and that they're wanted and needed, and that we want to be together, that we work hard and we play hard. We can and you can do both at the same time.
I think it also lends to a feeling of generosity.
Yeah.
Not just money, where it's like, oh, well, we're going to spend X number of dollars on something like this, but the generosity that we do want everyone to be included. We do want people to find their home here.
The generosity of spirit.
There you go. I like that. And I feel like that's a real thing, like you said, that happens here, and people can feel it. And so I think doesn't play lend itself to more of that kind of a feeling than not to say that again, work, you can do both, but I feel like when you play, there's a feeling a little more guard is down, maybe.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a little more connecting, a little more generous of time. And
Well, there are people that went ice skating that would not walk into our church. But you invite your neighbors to go ice skating. I feel safe doing that. And then you meet people and you get to know people, and it changes things. And so I'll give you for example, at the ice skating at RDV this week, we had a mother and daughter that walked into the RDV. They saw that there was ice skating. They said, "Oh, what's going on?" And we said, "Oh, hey, this is our church has rented out the rink. You can come in and go ice skating if you." "Oh, I'm not with your church." And I'm like, "That's okay. Oh, I'm here for something a little later." "Yeah, well, if you want to go skating, go skating." "Well, okay." And so they walk in, and they start to go in, and the manager knew that they had been there, and he's like, "Hey, this is their church." And the lady's like, "Oh, no, they said I could come in." He looked at me and goes, "That is so cool."
Yeah. It's not expected, right?
He said, "That's so cool." Like, I guess a lot of times when organizations rent out the rink, they're very, no, if you're not with our church or invited by a church member, you're not, you can't go in. And whenever we've rented out, if people walk in off the street, go on, go ice skating. And,
Yeah.
And to me, that goes to, will I ever see those people at our church? I doubt it. But do I feel like we told them who we were. So, I mean, I suppose if they wanted to, they could. But the point isn't whether they're going to come to our church here. It's that, hey, for maybe a second, we did something that hopefully made their life a little bit better.
Yeah.
And that matters.
Or just made their afternoon and maybe restored a little faith in
humanity sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes that's the minimum. The things that keep us from like feeling where that balance might be or what's okay with one versus another, work and play. I mean, I think it's personal for everyone. But at the end of the day, I really felt like giving us as a church the realization that it's okay to play, and maybe realizing that it's more of our culture than maybe we've thought about, and then embracing that for future. I just left the message feeling really good about who we are as a church identity, of going, yeah, we do, we work hard, but we play hard. And then things like that, where it's just like, if you can't spread a little love when you're out doing things that are fun for you. And that just seemed to wrap everything in maybe it's the permission thing. I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but maybe it's the permission to just like, okay, I'm not sure. Maybe I just give myself permission to have a little fun and try this out and see if it doesn't work, instead of going the other route.
If I can just say one thing as we close off here. As I look back on my time with my children, Eric is officially out of the house. He's been at boarding school for a little bit, but he's officially in college at the end of this month, right? And Kyla's been in college for the last 2 years. So my kids, they're kind of, I kind of expect this is the last summer that both of them will be at home. I'd love it if that doesn't turn out to be that way, Kyle and Eric, if you're listening. But there's that chance that this is it. And when I look back on my parenting years, particularly with my children, I am hard pressed. In fact, I can't think of a time that I regretted playing with my kids. Yeah. Where I regretted going and doing and playing and doing something. And I can think of times that I really regret that I was at work, that I didn't have to be there. I chose it because for whatever reason. And I don't live with regret like that. I mean, but I also am smart enough to look back and go, hey, if I could do something different, I would. And if I had one thing to say to anybody listening to this is, I think work is a little bit like what Jesus said, with the poor you will have with you always. Work you will always have with you. But when you have the chance to play, to spend time with people you love, take advantage of those opportunities. Using the grain of salt that there's always wisdom to be had. There is work that needs to be done. There is a job that you have an employer that expects you to get some things done. But for me, I know in my life, I went so much further than my employer ever expected. They were happy for me to go there, but so much further than they expected. And I could have taken time to go on Sunday and do, the zoo trip with my kids instead of feeling like I needed to go out visiting church members that morning while my wife took the kids to go do something. There are just so many times I think about I could have readjusted my life. And my challenge to anybody out there is how can you adjust your life to fit play into it in a responsible way, a time for everything. But where is your play meter at? Is it at the right spot or is it not? And I think most of us intuitively have a sense of where it's at and where it should be.
Well, I feel inspired. I think I'll take the rest of the week off.
Melanie, you should. That's why we have vacation days around here.
Man, I see what you did there. You had me for a second. I'm like, wait a minute, she's Oh, man. No, I think too, I was speaking with someone yesterday and their advice was once you have the self-realization that this is who you are, and if this is something that you're like, hey, I really do need to have a little more balance. Like once you have that, then there's an opportunity to make good decisions. There's opportunity to make change. And even as a church, I mean, if we see opportunities where we can play and we can maybe have the one that came to my mind was the work bee that we had last year. We laughed, we had fun, we drove over curbs with the truck, and we lost things out of the back. But we got work done. And the next day,
you're making me start to feel anxious now.
the next day, the parking lot looked fantastic, right? All the bushes were cleaned, and there were a few mishaps, but
no church members were harmed in the making of this church meeting.
I'm pretty sure that's how I lost my last tire before I had to replace them on my truck. But that's another story for another time. All right, so let's see. What do we have left in summer party? We've got improv night.
Yep.
We've got parents' night out.
Right.
And then we have lake day.
We have
hobbies and ice cream.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, we have hobbies and ice cream as well. Everything is on the wholelife.church/events. If you swipe up in today's show notes, that is a permanent link that's always in the show notes. But here's the caveat. Freud and I are working with Robert Vargas this afternoon. This is Tuesday. You'll hear this on Wednesday. Hopefully by tomorrow, Lake Day, we'll have all of the things that need to be in place so you'll know what's happening. I just recommended a really great ice cream truck to be there. So I'm just saying you might want to mark your calendar and make sure you're at that event. Improv night. My wife was like, what? Improv night? You didn't tell me about improv night. I'm like, sure I did. She's like, no, you didn't, because I'd want to, because we're going to improv night.
Bring your friends to that. Can I just say, the more people here, the more fun it's going to be. And I think it's going to be
absolutely.
Here's what I'll say. Like you think about whether it's going ice skating or if you went to SAC Comedy Lab downtown, it would cost you a little bit of money to go do that. You come here, it's on us. Just come and have a good time, and you will have a good time. We've had a great conversation with the folks from SAC Comedy Lab. They're really looking forward to being here. They know they're coming to a church, so it's going to be you don't have to worry about whether the humor is going to be appropriate for what you feel comfortable for. It'll be great, and they're going to do a fantastic job for us.
And for all of you that get the newsletter, just in case you didn't get the secondary follow-up, which was a correction, you do not, in fact, have to register.
No,
there is no place in the event. And if there ever is an event like, what's coming up? Parents' Night Out. That is on the 25th, but by the 18th you have to register, and you'll notice in that event on the event page there is a registration link, and it will not let you go. You have to register, and it's very plain that you have to register. So that was just a mishap, a typo, a oversight in the newsletter. So hopefully you got the follow-up and you realize just come and invite your friends to improv night, and it's on us.
Yep.
Next week is family that plays together, but it's laughter.
It's laughter.
Anyone remember Laughter, the Best Medicine?
Yes.
Reader's Digest.
I used to read that.
That was the first thing. When the Reader's Digest came, my mom was like, who's got my Reader's Digest? I'd be like, nobody. I don't know where it is. What are you talking about? Until that and
Humor in Uniform.
Humor in Uniform was good. And what was the other one? There was three, right? Laughter.
So like Community something, Community.
Those were, the funny stories, the Community. I don't remember what that one was though. Oh, Life in these United States.
States.
Those were kind of fun too. Those were usually lighthearted stories.
Wow, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
It's been a minute.
We're getting old. Wow.
You really did just date us.
as
Did you
the-
also play the Publishers Clearinghouse?
Oh, yes, PCH was all
Is that
over.
how you got your every year got the little stickers with your address and name on it that you could put on your envelopes so that
Send
you
it
could
back.
send things?
And maybe Ed McMahon's coming to your house in the middle of nowhere. No, he's not.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that was
goodness! Half of the people driving in their cars right now are wondering what in the world.
Look
we're
up Ed
talking
McMahon.
about.
Yes, sir.
Johnny.
Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon. Okay, now if that didn't date us, I don't know what will. So, family that plays together. Then what's coming up after that? We've got a bunch in this series. What's
Hobbies. Hobbies will be coming up after that. We're going to talk
And
about
this-
nature.
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 The family that plays together goes out in nature.
Yeah, I think so.
Holy moly.
I think we're going to go out to a lake. That's nature.
Yeah. we'll be
Oh,
doing
lake
that.
day. Look at you guys, like planning.
It's almost
stuff.
like we thought about this.
Almost like it. I'm finding a recurring theme. So laughter, improv night.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. Okay.
And then the final one.
Is
Are we still doing the final one?
The final one was, remind me what the
Travel. We're going to
Travel,
travel.
yeah, we're going to talk about travel.
And we happen to be sending our Pathfinders all the way to Wyoming.
Oshkosh.
So that
Wyoming,
seemed
Or
like
not
a...
Wyoming. Yeah.
Wow.
If they go to Oshkosh, you'll be there by yourself.
You're gonna have-
Don't do that. Don't
well,
do
you
that.
can spread out. You got lots of
You have
room.
a lot more space.
The police will be there
You
within
might
the
actually be
hour.
able to get hotel rooms.
Well, anyway, so that's going to do it for this week. Go to, again, wholelife.church/events and make sure that you register if you're ready for Parents' Night Out on the 25th. Got to have it in by the 18th. And please do come. And Lake Day. Don't miss Lake Day. I've heard really good things. And check that back out on Wednesday. We'll have all the information there. And just mark your calendar and share that with a friend who doesn't want to come out to Lake Day, tube, ride in a boat, kayak,
Eat food,
eat food, volleyball,
hang out,
hang out, all kinds of stuff. So make
put
sure
on
you come.
suntan lotion so you don't burn.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my checklist.
yeah, Ken's personal check. Ken's top 5 for Lake Day.
That's the top.
Sunscreen,
That's the top one, my friend.
and a big hat. That's it. Gingers unite. That's what I say. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening and have a great week.